As a last step now, let's look at the case where the machine is totally lost. As you can see here, our server demo SQL 03 is not bootable. The operating system is not found. What I did was to use fdisk, and I just deleted the partitions on each of the hard drives. Just totally blow it away. So the data, there's no data on this box. It's not bootable. So in a case like this, let's now do a full recovery of the server itself. So what you would do is to boot the server from a CD that you can download from SyncSort. This ExpressDR CD is a CD that boots the server in RAM drive, or RAM disk rather, and it's booting it up, and it's trying really to do two things. It's trying to load a driver for the RAID controller, and it's trying to load the driver for the NIC cards in the box. And with those drivers loaded, it's then capable, it's going to ask us a couple of questions, and if we give it those information, it's then capable of pulling the data block for block from my secondary server, my XRS box, to this bare machine. So the recovery is between XR server and bare machine. The master server does not come into play. The master server, in fact, doesn't even need to be up for this recovery to work. You can see there it's asking us to press any key to install additional drivers. So let's assume that the RAID controller is not supported by us, but you have the driver. You can just press a key there, and via USB or CD or floppy, just add it to the kernel as it boots up. The CD is updated periodically, downloadable from our site, and it contains a vast majority of all the servers that's out there, or drivers I should say, that's out there for RAID controllers and NIC cards. So there it just booted up. It's also one CD for all your servers. It's not a CD you need to burn for every server you want to recover. It's one CD for all the servers in your environment. So it just booted up. It's going to ask us a couple of questions, as I said. Here it is going to prompt us for the IP address of the secondary device. Remember, it's not talking to the backup server or the master server at all, so it needs to get some information, and that IP address is 125. So what I'm doing now is to hit DHCP, and it's going to try to get an IP address using the DHCP server. And since we have a DHCP server on this network, you can see that it comes back and it says it got an IP address and all the other information from a DHCP server. So click on OK. It will give us all that information, and we're good to go. If you didn't have a DHCP server on the network, you can simply just fill out this information, give it any IP address. It doesn't need to be the IP address that the server will have after it boots up. As long as it has an IP address that's routable to your XR server, that's good enough. So at this point you hit next. It will then ask us information on how to get into the XRS, how to get into that XR server. So the username and password, I'm going to use administrator, and then the drive letter that contains the image that I want to recover. In this case it's the G drive. I don't need to use administrator. I can use a subadmin account, whether it's domain or local, on that box to get the data. Normally a local account would make sense. If you're at a DR situation and the domain server is not up yet, just a local account that has read access to the G drive will suffice. So I hit next. Now it logs into the box, and it will come back and give us information regarding the snapshots that resides and the servers that resides on that D drive, or on the G drive, I'm sorry. And there you can see it says that there's a server called demo SQL 03 on that G drive. If I backed up many servers to this drive, they would have all been listed there. I can select the one I want to recover. In this case I'm going to go with the demo SQL 03, hit next, and now it will give me a list of all the snapshots on that server. I simply go in and then select the snapshot that we're going to use for the recovery. We can use any of these. There's the first recovery point, second and third one. Let's assume we want to push the machine back to that point in time. Let's assume there was a virus that was injected in the box. The last backup is bad, so I want to use the middle one to bring the machine back to a good state. Hit next down here. And this window now allows me to do some advanced functions if I want to change sizes of the target disk and so on. In this case, I'm going to select both drives for recovery. As you can see there, drive 0 and drive 1, or disk 0 and 1, C and D. If I wanted to make changes, instead of C going to disk 0 in my new machine, taking it to disk 1, I can make those changes at this point. I'm going to go with this setup because this is the correct setup, so I'm hitting next. Here it is asking me, what do I want to recover? I need to recover C because C is my bootable partition, but I don't need to recover D because D is now the drive that houses my database, my SQL database. I'm going to check to recover it, but you don't need to do that. Let's assume the database drive D was large compared to C. I can just make the machine bootable, that is, recover the C drive, and after the machine boots up, I can use the instant availability to fail over to my backup destination, in other words, my XR server. So I can just use that mapping function to make D appear as a local drive on the newly recovered box, and then bring the server up, and then later tonight in my maintenance time I can then push the data back to my local server. So I'm going to do C and D for recovery, and then just information to make sure that informational window to make sure that all the selections is correct, and then I hit recover, and at this point the restore is running. It will run at line speed because it's a block level recovery. So it's going to run at line speed and pull the data from my XR server back to my bare machine. And there you can see the recovery completed. It took about 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes for this recovery to run, to recover both drives, the C drive and the D drive. So at this point, all we need to do is really just take the CD out and reboot the machine, and we should be back to that recovery point. And the recovery point we used was August 27th at 11:02 a.m. So that's the recovery point, which means this machine is now block for block identical to the state it was at August 27th at 11:02 a.m. So let me go and shut down the box, take the CD out of the CD-ROM drive, and boot the machine up. And at this point the machine should boot up without problems, and we should be back to that point. The SQL database is recovered because I chose the D drive to be restored as well. And again, just as I said earlier, you have the option not to recover the D drive. And if you choose not to recover the D drive, what's going to happen is that obviously the machine will boot up, the database won't come up, but then you can use the instant availability function to just map the D drive back to your XR server and really recover the server in a matter of minutes, as opposed to having to wait hours if that database was fairly large. Let me log into my box and just show that the server, the database is running. You can see it's asking us here what happened. Why did the machine unexpectedly shut down? And it will ask you that because the machine, if you recall, every time a backup job runs, we take a snapshot of the box, and we now recovered to that point in time, or to that snapshot. So as far as the server is concerned, at least 2003, it's going to say, why did I suddenly shut down? And you can just say express DR, and it goes into your system event logs, and everything is up and running. If you look at the server itself, I'm fully recovered. I have my C drive and my D drive back, both local, and my SQL server is running on this box. And that concludes the Express DR session. If there are any questions, feel free to give SyncSort a call, give your account representative a call, and if you're interested in looking at the software in your environment, please talk to him or her about that. That can certainly be arranged.